And so we have our story today where we have a rich man who has no name. And we have a poor man whose name is Lazarus, and we know his name. Jesus is trying to teach people what really matters. And he uses this as an example. Now, the rich man has great stuff. Great stuff. In fact, he wears purple linen, so he's probably royalty somehow. At the very least, he serves in a high position in a royal household. He is rich. Things are good. As they would say in The Simpsons, things are coming up, Millhouse. And then there's Lazarus. Now, it's not just that Lazarus is poor and doesn't have a lot. Other translations don't just say that Lazarus was laying at the man's door, that he was dumped at the man's door. So not only is Lazarus part of the vulnerable of society, but he's probably unable to even walk. He's got sores, he can't walk. He is an outcast. He's not a part of quote-unquote civilized society. Because in this time period, if you had something about you that was different, the easiest solution was just to make you go away. And yet, he has a name. Now, the biblical mandate is to take care of those who are less fortunate, especially when we are in excess. And so you have Jesus setting a very clear example. He goes, you had great stuff, and now look. It's like the joke. Everyone gets real nervous, like, oh no, he's not going to try and tell us a joke. Say it ain't so. But it's like the joke. See, Jesus says when the rich man died, he went to a place of torment. When Lazarus died, he was carried by angels. Notice, the rich man dies, he gets to be buried. Lazarus dies, it doesn't say some people came along and they buried him. The angels carried him away. That means, translation, nobody cared. Nobody did nothing. He probably laid there for a few days until someone was like, oh snap, did you know he's dead? But it's like the joke. There was two men that died. One was a priest and the other was a cab driver. And they got to the pearly gates because heaven has gates. It's a gated community, kind of like Lakeside. And so they got to the pearly gates. You know, it was really hard to get those gates. They had to go to hell and get a contractor and everything. It was rough. So anyway, they get to the gates, and St. Peter is there, and he says, welcome to heaven. Based on how you lived your life and how many people you affected, depends how big your heavenly house is. Now, disclaimer, that's not how it really works. But anyway, it works for the joke. So he takes the priest and he says, you were a priest, you served your whole life, so you get this nice little cottage. And the guy's like, oh man, I get a nice little cottage, this is a pretty good deal. The next man behind him is a cab driver. St. Peter greets him, he says, welcome. He says, based off, how you lived your life and how many people you affected with your life, depends on how big your house is. And the cab driver goes, oh no, the priest got a cottage. He was a freak. What does that mean for me? And he's really nervous. And the angel takes him in, and they're walking down the street, and they walk past. Cottage? Not yours, keep going. Cottage? Not yours, keep going. Duplex? Not yours, keep going. And the guy's like, whoa, that's a huge mansion. Yeah, it's yours. I get a mansion? Yeah, go on in. It's like, sweet. He goes, he's got this huge mansion. Well, the priest sees this. So he calls management. He's like, excuse me, I have a complaint. So he goes back to Peter at the gate, and he's like, I was a priest my entire life. I get a cottage. This guy's a cab driver. He gets a mansion. What gives? Peter looks at him and says, it's really simple, my friend. When you preached, people slept. But when he drove, people prayed. Okay. The rich man in our story did not live his life the way he was supposed to, and when he dies, it becomes evident for the story. But he can't let go of how he thinks the world is supposed to work. He's so accustomed to his privilege and to having a lot, that even in the afterlife, he's like, oh man, it sucks here. It's hot, it's miserable. And he sees Abraham and Lazarus. That should be his first clue. Let's see, Lazarus is with Abraham and I'm over here. Exhibit A. Doesn't get the memo. He's like, hey, I'm real thirsty. Could you have Lazarus come and just a drop of water out of the tongue? Abraham's like, that's not how this works. But the guy's so wrapped up in his privilege that he can't see that it doesn't matter how much he had in life. It was how he lived his life. And answer, he chose poorly. He chose poorly. But Lazarus was probably very generous with whatever little he did have. So how do we deal with what we got and what we don't got? How do we decide what we can and can't do? Well, I have a guest speaker today who's going to give us a little story in that.
Back in New York, I am the head of development for a nonprofit called Robin Hood. When I'm not fighting poverty, I'm fighting fires as the assistant captain of a volunteer fire company. Now, in our town, where the volunteers supplement a highly skilled career staff, you have to get to the fire scene pretty early to get in on any action. I remember my first fire. I was the second volunteer on the scene, so there was a pretty good chance I was going to get in. But still, it was a real foot race against the other volunteers to get to the captain in charge to find out what our assignments would be. When I found the captain, he was having a very engaging conversation with the homeowner, who was surely having one of the worst days of her life. Here it was, the middle of the night. She was standing outside in the pouring rain, under an umbrella, in her pajamas, barefoot, while her house was in flames. The other volunteer who had arrived just before me, let's call him Lex Luthor, got to the captain first and was asked to go inside and save the homeowner's dog. The dog! Oh, I was stunned with jealousy. Here was some lawyer or money manager who for the rest of his life gets to tell people that he went into a burning building to save a living creature. Just because he beat me by 5 seconds. Well, I was next. The captain waved me over. He said, Bezos, I need you to go into the house. I need you to go upstairs, past the fire, and I need you to get this woman a pair of shoes. I swear. So, not exactly what I was hoping for, but off I went. Up the stairs, down the hall, past the real firefighters, who were pretty much done putting out the fire at this point, into the master bedroom to get a pair of shoes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm no hero. I carried my payload back downstairs where I met my nemesis and the precious dog by the front door. We took our treasures outside to the homeowner where, not surprisingly, his received much more attention than did mine. A few weeks later, the department received a letter from the homeowner thanking us for the valiant effort displayed in saving her home. The act of kindness she noted above all others, someone had even gotten her a pair of shoes. You know, in both my vocation at Robin Hood and my avocation as a volunteer firefighter, I am witness to acts of generosity and kindness on a monumental scale. But I'm also witness to acts of grace and courage on an individual basis. And you know what I've learned? They all matter. So as I look around this room at people who either have achieved or are on their way to achieving remarkable levels of success, I would offer this reminder. Don't wait. Don't wait until you make your first million to make a difference in somebody's life. If you have something to give it now. Serve food at a soup kitchen, clean up a neighborhood park, be a mentor. Not every day is going to offer us a chance to save somebody's life, but every day offers us an opportunity to affect one. So get in the game. Save the shoes. Thank you.
some monumental achievement in your life to make a difference in somebody else's life. That's what Jesus is trying to tell everyone who's listening. The rich man probably started out with great intentions. Well, if I save enough, then I can do. And Jesus says that's not the point. You could have made a difference for Lazarus, who was right in front of you the whole time. But you got lost along the way. So he says, well, send someone to warn my brothers what might happen. And he tells them, they've got it. They've got the good news. They know. Somebody coming back from the dead isn't going to make a difference for them if they're not listening already. What would happen if tomorrow you ran into Jesus back again? If he asked what you've been up to, what would you say? Would you tell him that you were just waiting until you hit some magical benchmark to do good in the world? Or would you tell him that you did all the good you could as often as you could? The rich man doesn't get it. This whole thing is about one simple concept. Love your neighbor. That's what it's trying to teach us. At the root of everything, it's all of this. It's an open note test, but you don't even need the notes because literally the answer is love your neighbor. Do the best you can every day with what you got. That's what all of this is trying to teach us. When we commune with God, I put the chalice and the paten, that's what those are called, on the altar today. I know, church words. Chalice, paten. Because at the moment they're empty. There's no bread on them, there's no juice in the cup. But it doesn't matter. Because God is giving grace to us right now and tomorrow. Whether or not we're taking bread and juice, partaking in the body and blood of Christ, in this moment, God is already giving to us. And we are in communion with God at all times. Like Lanny said in the children's moment, we can pray wherever we're at. We can do good deeds wherever we are at. And so Jesus teaches this, knowing that the society he has come to might not get it. It's ironic. Luke is writing this gospel knowing that half the people that are going to hear it know already that Jesus came back from the dead, and he's like, a dead man could come back and it ain't gonna matter. Jesus did that. Came back from the dead. Every Sunday is a mini Easter where we celebrate the fact that up from the grave he rose. Right? And yet he says that could happen and people still won't get it. Here it is, 2019. And we live in a world full of haves and have-nots. And we ask ourselves, what could I do? What could I do? I don't have as much as insert whoever it is here. But we don't have to wait until we hit some magical benchmark to do good work. I know so many fellow clergy in the East Ohio Conference who serve as licensed local pastors or provisional elders or provisional deacons or have to wait until they're ordained to magically do good in the world. I know so many people that do good things in the world every day, and nobody knows about it. Sucks to not have anybody know about it, because then we don't get to pump up our ego and feel great about ourselves. But that's not what it's about. What it's about is that God loves you. And nothing you can do can change that. But that God has a desire that you would be so full of that love that you couldn't help but then do good in the world. That's what it means to be a Methodist. We don't do good things because we're trying to get a punch card to get our way into heaven. We do good things because we're so full of the love of God that we can't help but do good things for others and share that with the world. There's opportunities for goodness and service all around you. We've all got gifts, and we've all got an opportunity to use them. That's the reason that I love that video clip. Because in the beginning, it's all about him. I wanted to get there first. I wanted to get to do this. I wanted to save the living creature. I wanted to have the story to tell. I. But in the end, it's not about him, because he realizes it's about the woman who was standing there at 2 in the morning with her house on fire with no shoes in the rain. And it was about the fact that somebody took the time to get her a pair of shoes. And he doesn't say, and she wrote the letter to me because she knew I did it. He just says, she noticed that somebody got her shoes. That's what it means to be a disciple. Do good stuff and not worry about if people see you do it or not, because it's not about that. It's about, did you love with all that you had? That's the point of today's gospel reading. We have chances every day to love with all that we have, but do we? That's what makes Jesus an outcast among the outcasts. And he wants us to join him there. Not to worry about being part of the mainstream or fitting into XYZ, but to just love everything we got and do the best we can with what we're given. So don't wait for that benchmark on tomorrow that may never come. Grab hold of the goodness and mercy present within you and do good today, tomorrow, the next day. Because that's what God does for us and what he calls us to do for others. Because he loves us. And I got news. Nothing we can do can change that. Nothing can change that. Amen.